trying to make sure you can see everything that I have laid out here. I believe that's really good. Let me double check in case there's any comments. I'll get the tablet ready. Make sure we're live on the right page, and there we are. I hate that it's sideways and I don't know what else I can do. Let me try. Okay, I don't know that we're going to be able to do anything to get it to where it's all in there. Move to the right just a tad. Move toward me just a tad. Okay, that's, I think, close enough. Hopefully I'll be able to see the comments here. Okay, also before we started on this, wanted to show you one more thing. I'm going to use this paper palette today. I got it marked down at Hobby Lobby, but you can order it on Amazon, and that's real convenient. But I also usually make myself a chart like this, and I don't have an old one to show you here available, but and hopefully you can read this. But this is what my best color mixes for flesh tones, and as I mix them up on my palette, as I find one, I'm going to put a little slather of it here of what it looks like. And this is your first basic skin tone, will be your burnt umber, red, yellow, and white. And then as your base, you'll start with the red, yellow, and blue. And then you will add your white from there. You can lighten it by adding more yellow and white. If you're working on a ruddy complexion, you use this same base and add a little bit of red. And when you're adding these colors, you're only adding, I mean, just a dollop at a time. If it's a mid-toned skin tone, and you've made it you want to lighten it though, let me put it this way, you can go with a little bit of yellow and white added to your base. If that's too light and you want to go for more of a mid-tone, you can add just a tad of blue and red. If you want a more reddish or ruddy complexion, you start with your same base, add a little red. If you want to go a little bit darker, there's cooler tones of darker and warmer tones of darker. For the cooler, you would add just a little bit of purple, usually is the best for that. But if you're wanting a warmer tone of the darker, you would add a little bit of burnt umber or a little bit of the orange that you mix up with the red and yellow. If you want it even darker, you can take after you've added your red and your yellow, make a little bit more orange, you can add just a dollop of blue. And if it's a more olive complexion, you add a little bit of your burnt umber. And what did I put for RS? Plus your base. So, well, whatever the RS was, I'm sorry. That's, raw sienna. I'm sorry, raw sienna. And that usually gives you a more olive complexion. So, depending on what complexion that you're wanting to use, if you have a question, let me know, and we will go back to that and try to find a complexion that's closer to whatever picture that you chose. Good morning, Mary. Or Mary Catherine, huh? Do you go by both Mary Catherine, like both names? What I'm going to do now is last night what we did was get our art journal. I always take an extra paper, just as an FYI, if you've not used an art journal a lot. I take just a bigger old paper of some sort, and I put it on behind each side. That way you don't mess up the next pages that are in a row in there. So especially if you can see, I've used these for spraying and painting and everything else, so that you don't mess up your next pages. You can just put those behind it. So I always do that. But last night we tore a picture out of a magazine. I tore mine out of this Natural Health magazine right here, because she was a size and had a good enough face to use on. And we wanted to kind of cat-a-corner it, so whenever we get our background and everything on there, that should be a lot of fun. Well, I made a boo-boo last night on mine because I wanted it to dry kind of flat. I have this Oh, it's supposed to be a thing that keeps things from burning in your heat press, but it also keeps things from sticking. And I put it underneath where I paint a lot, obviously. Well, last night I stuck it in here because I wanted to close my book to try to have my page flat for this morning. And some of this stuff that looks like it's stuck on there actually stuck to my page. So I went back over a little while ago. You can see some of it on here, but I put some white gesso in the other areas. Didn't have to do that, but I just wanted to start out with it clear. I've got a couple of palette knives, a wad of different size brushes. You know, we don't have to use specific ones, but I'll tell you which ones, you know, that I'm using as I'm using them. And let me get my palette out. And use what colors you have. If you just have the liquid acrylics, use the liquid acrylics. And this is burnt sienna. We probably won't need much of that because my lady doesn't have a darker complexion, but we have it just in case. And here's the burnt umber. See how much darker that is? But that's good for adding a little bit more of a deeper tone. And your main colors, I've got cadmium red. This is medium hue. I just went with a medium hue for everything. And these are my Blick acrylics, and I'll put a link for that in the comments later if you're interested in using these paints. There's our cad medium yellow. What did we not put yet? Blue. Here, this is ultramarine blue. I have the black out, but black is so strong that I just don't think that we will need it for anything, but I got it out. And I'm going to get out a decent amount of white because I tend to be heavy-handed, so I'll put it right here. And it's Blick as well. Yes, Teflon mat. That's the word. That's the word for it. You know what? I never thought about that. I haven't had like Teflon cookware or anything like that in years and years. My husband is from Parkersburg, West Virginia, and a little town called Lubeck near there. And that was an area where Teflon was made by Corning there, and it poisoned their water system. And there's massive amounts of people with thyroid and other cancers dying at young ages from the exposure to their water supply to the Teflon. And I never thought about that. I probably shouldn't be touching a Teflon mat with my bare hands anymore because it's got Teflon on it, and I try to decrease all of my exposure. Okay, so to start out, to get your, if you don't want to do all this, just go and get, the only one I have here is one I picked up when I ran out, is an unbleached titanium. I picked this up at Hobby Lobby. Liquitex is also a good brand. I prefer the Blick because it's less expensive and just as good. But we'll go with equal parts of the red. This is making our base. Equal parts of the red, the yellow, and the blue. I don't know if that was equal, but it was pretty equal. And that's going to give us actually a pretty decent dark skin tone. Might have needed to make more than that. My girl's at least got arms. But anyway, so see how that mixed up? A nice deep brown color. Okay, we will add white to that. So I'm going to take right now while we're doing this, let me see, I thought I had another palette knife out here. I know I did. Here it is. I'm going to take just a little bit of this and put it on here because that's my base. That's what it looks like. So then I'll know that's what my base looks like. Now here I'm adding some white. That's a pretty good bit of it, but I'm trying to be in a hurry here. So that could be a basic, pretty dang pale skin tone. I'm going to put a little of it on my thing. Here it is, plus white. And looking at my girl, here's where you would look. She's more warmer than that. So you would add just a tad of your, pull off some of that. You can add a little yellow. If we're wanting to lighten this, we're going to add a little yellow and a little white. I'm trying to hurry, so I'm not wanting this to take up the majority of our, let's see how that's a little paler. That's also a good skin tone. Okay, we're going to take, if you wanted it to be more ruddy, you take your base, which is here. Let's see if we can get a little of that, and add just a tad of red. You could add this now to, if you wanted to, see how that's redder than that, to this, if it was a person, say, with a sunburn or something like that, and get a little bit more red to that. Okay, now if we've now made this too light, which it is for Our Lady, too light, we would add a little bit of blue and a little bit of red. I don't know if that was enough red to deal with there. It's definitely too much. Okay, that's a little more of a pinky skin tone. That's getting closer to what my lady's skin tone looks like. If we wanted it darker, I'm going to mix these two together so that I'll have plenty for working on my lady in a minute, because I think all of that together is going to be close to the color that my lady is. Or that's the color I'm going to use anyway. Okay, now if we wanted it dark, we could add a little bit of burnt. This is where instead of starting with your regular base, you would start with your burnt umber and your raw sienna and get a deeper base. We'll put that on there just to show it. Okay, and if we wanted that a little cooler, that's where we would add a little purple. And to get purple, we're going to mix red and blue. That's a beautiful skin tone there too. So there's our darker but cooler than the regular base. And we would want to add orange to that base. Just put it right here. And to get our orange, we're going to mix a little bit of this red, a little bit of this yellow. And that's a little bit of a warmer dark skin tone. That's a pretty color too. If we wanted it even darker, we would do red, more yellow, which I just did there, and plus a little bit more blue. You could use black instead of this if you wanted, but it's liable to get too dark. Let's see how dark that got. And if we wanted it to be olive, we're going to start with our burnt umber and our burnt sienna and add a little bit of our original base. You could add a, you know, olive has a green tinge to it. If you felt like you needed to add a little green to it, you could. But there we go. That's not as olive as I would have wanted it to be. But I'm not going to add green at this point. There's a little more olive. That's pretty. So there's the basic skin tones and what you would do to sort of match your lady. We don't have to match our lady perfectly because we're going to be covering up the skin tone she has anyway. So hopefully that helped. And this is going to be my main palette. Let me get a rag and wipe off my palette knife and kind of scrape together the one I am using. Sure, I'll take, when we're done, because my camera's up in the thing, when we're done, I'll post a picture of that color mixing chart, and then I will put the link to the colors and all that in there too. You're very welcome. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. I just hope we have fun with it. So that's the goal. I'm gonna, when I do my background, I've decided I'll probably, and that can be any color in the world you want to. You know, I love the bright colors, so I'm probably gonna use this, either this purple and green or this purple and teal or somewhere along of those three colors, and I'll decide once a little more of this goes on. But this is the closest to the skin tone that I have there, so that's the one I'm gonna be using. Try to get all this out of the way and pick a relatively small, you know, a brush that's comparative to the size of the face of your lady. You don't want it to be take so much. If I use something this small, it's going to take me forever to do all that for the largest portion of her face. But let's go in first and work on the shadows, because that's going to be the easiest way. I'm going to just sit this to this side. Hopefully you can see enough of that. Facebook, in order to not make it look sideways, makes me do my picture this way, and my phone this way, and we, you know, can just do the best we can. Okay, you can see here, hopefully, where I had my skin tone that is best for the lady that I picked out. I'm going to mix a little bit of that original base in with it, just with my brush, and that's going to be my shadow color, or the beginning of my shadow color, because some of our shadows are going to be darker than others. I'm going to mix a good bit down on this end of it, because these will be our darkest shadows. And I just have kind of a small brush to do the shadows with. She's got the darkest shadow right here next to where her thyroid gland would be. She's pretty shadowed through all this area here. So just look at your picture, and anywhere that looks pretty dark, mix in a little bit of your base with your skin tone and fill in those dark areas. And almost how, like when you're doing a paint by number, you're thinking, goodness gracious, this is never going to blend in together and look right. You can tell where each color stops and starts. Well, that's okay, because it's okay for that to look a little bit choppy. She's got a little bit of shadow over here on this side from her hair. Good bit of shadow right through here in her hairline. We're going to focus on the face first, and then I'll worry about the arms and all that, because I don't know how long with stopping to talk so much and everything in here that it's going to take. So just in case we're rushing in a minute, I'm going to spend a lot more time on the facial detail, because that's more important as far as what we got going on. Her ear's kind of dark in there, and there's another ear over there. And then this jawline. Wet my brush a little. It doesn't really look dark, but you can tell where it's defined and where her jawline is. So we're gonna darken that in. It's pretty dark right here near her eyes. That may not have been as dark, so I'm going to go a little bit to my lighter version of the darker. Just look and look and look. This really just teaches a lot about looking for the shadows in the pictures. And you know, in your subject of anything, even if this was flowers, there's darker areas and lighter areas. It's definitely very dark in her nostril. So I'm going to get something very dark in there. It's very dark here inside the corners of her mouth. Then it's back to a lighter version of the dark. I mean, we're just digging for it now. Where's their shadows at? There's like a crease in her face right there. It's a little bit darker beside her mouth here. Those indentations, those are a little bit darker. She actually has one right here. In my day job, I'll tell you this real quick. In my day job, I'm a traditional naturopath, and I study facial features and things on the face that can relate to your health. Going with the medium here around her eyes. And when someone has a straight line right there between their nose and their lip, that often means they have repressed anger. And that's, you know, a person that, you know, you kind of feel bad for, because you need to get that stuff sort of out of your system. You don't need to hold it in. But that's an indicator that a person has potentially represses their anger. It's a little bit darker right there where her chin's at. This is darker than her face in the middle of this shadowing here. Of her neck. Okay, before we go to the regular skin tone, we also need to hit the high points, because if or the lightest areas, and I'm gonna go with almost straight white on that. I am going to go with straight white on that. I tried to pick up a tad of this. Let me see if I can pick up just a tad so it won't be stark white. But you want it pretty close to white, because we're just marking the areas that are really highlighted, things that really stick out. Right here on the tip of her nose is really light. Right here. Just look at where the light's hitting her at. And just get some in there. So basically, you know, this is done in layers. The portraits are painted in layers. It's not just find a skin tone and put that one-dimensional skin tone on there. It's kind of not the way it works. Okay, her cheeks are pretty rosy there, so I'm going to pick up more red than I think I need and mix it in with the our skin tone down here, because we're going to be covering that up with the skin tone in a minute. And I'm going to want some of this rosy cheeks to still show through. And even, well, I'm not going to do that yet, because even redder I would have done her lips. Rinsing my brush, and now I'm going to try to go with my regular skin tone here. And I'm getting it pretty thin, putting a good bit of water in there. Make it a little bit more translucent, just a little bit, so that some of these shadows will still show through. And highlights. But we'll add more in if we need to. But if you've ever looked at like an oil portrait up really close, it's not a solid anyway. It's like little blocky pieces. That's definitely too pale, so I'm going to mix a little bit of this darker in with it. Just a little bit. Not enough to be a shadow. But what this practice does is get you, that's a pretty good match. You can hardly see it going on there. Get you used to the proportions of your features and sort of where everything's at on the face. Because we think of your eyes being, you know, way up near the forehead. It seems like whenever we try to draw a picture, when all reality they're near about down to the center of the face, and then 1/3 below that the end of the nose, 1/3 below that the top of the chin, and right in between those two the mouth. I'm not wanting those other layers of paint to dry, and a little bit they have, before I'm putting on this layer, because I do want it to blend a little bit. Oh, what wonderful news, Mary Catherine, and thank you, Danita. I want y'all to, if you're doing this along with me, or if you do it later on and you just want to watch this video first, whenever you do try it, I want y'all to share yours with me too, and how, you know, how it sort of helped. If it helped you to, you know, to see a little more of how facial shapes are really have a lot to do with shadows, and you know, it's not as much as like the way you can tell how high a cheekbone is by how, you know, deep the shadow is underneath it. And, you know, this little hollow area beside the eye is actually a shadow. But this is, I'm anxious to do some like this of like my kids and grandkids. Like I said, I didn't want the pressure today. You know what I mean? If I was working on one of somebody in my family, I would be all worried about, oh, are they going to like it? And does it really, you know, it would have just put pressure on. And okay, thank you. I'm glad you're hanging out. It puts a lot of pressure on if if you're wondering if somebody's going to be judging it, of whether they're going to like it or not. I have no idea who this lady was. She was somebody who was paid to have her picture in a magazine, and it's getting a double use. That's all I know. And we're not heading for perfection. We're heading for practicing and playing and enjoying what we're doing. If I get too much of the shadow out, I have to go back and add a little more in. But see how she got too pale for a little while, and just coming back in with the shadows a little bit more again brings her face back to life. I'm just kind of lightly scrubbing and wiping to blend as much as I can at this point. Got to go back in where the nostrils and get that dark piece back in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do her eyebrows. And this isn't a real thin brush, but it has a good tip, it has a good point on the tip. For a second, I'm gonna get some of the red, more red than you would think, to fill in her lips a little bit. Let me put my glasses on. I have contacts on, but can't tell nothing. Thank you, Mary Catherine. I will, and congratulations on your husband. I love hearing great news. Then I mixed up a little bit lighter here. Got that too dark now for her lips because they were not quite that dark. Remember, you roll your brush to get back to that point. Think about where sort of some highlights would be on the lips. This is the part I'm most worried about because you think about teeth being white, and the teeth are really not white. They're sort of a beigeish tint with a little bit of a yellow. You don't want her to have yellow teeth, so I'm going to grab a little bit of this and try to make a yellowish white here. Without making the poor woman look like she's never been to the dentist. Definitely too much paint on my brush. Remember, this is semi-abstract. We're not trying to make ourselves look like we have a photograph here. That's a little bit scary looking. Okay, her gums are actually very, very pale when you're thinking about gum health. So we're gonna try to get a little bit of that in there. I probably should need a way more pointy brush. And then a little bit of a shadow. Between the teeth and have it still look white, but have a little bit of definition to the teeth. It's too dark. Okay, let's try this one. I'm trying to just sort of make them not so jagged on the bottom. And try to come back with just a little bit of the shadow color. around her hairline. Now paint's drying over here is what's happening. It's sitting right underneath the light. Okay, now I'm going to try my best to have this, see if I have a smaller liner brush I can use. Well, I know I got one out, but there, maybe that's it. I don't know that that's any smaller or not. It's not the one I was thinking I was having. Let's see what's here. Guess this is it. A liner brush is the one that has the really long, skinny bristles. Now we're going to try for, if this is completely dry, dagnabbit, we'll go with this one. To try to line in her eyes. Her eyes are awfully small, so we're going to see what'll happen. It's very difficult for my hands to do very small things, but we're going to try. You know, you don't have to always worry about as much details for things for like eyelashes. You're going to worry about like the indication of eyelashes. What appears to be eyelashes, not a bunch of individual eyelashes. And she happens to have brown eyes. They're a little bit darker. Let's see if any of this paint's not dry. That's what happens when you're working under light. Eyelashes are also kind of curved. They're not straight. And they don't all always go the same direction. Try to get a little bit of this burnt umber for the actual pupil, be a little bit darker. Trying to do some individual hairs. Now these would have to go backwards for me. While I have this on my brush, I'm going to come out here and look at some of her hairs that are individual, and I'm not trying to match them up completely. We're getting the deepest base, which is closest to her head. I'll definitely use a bigger brush now for that. We'll probably have to come back in after we do her blouse to do some of this bottom hair. Got a big old clot there. We're not going for perfection. Remember, we're a little bit abstract here. Trying to enjoy the process, not stress ourselves out over whether everything's just right. That's what's so good about it being in our art journal, too. This is for us. This is not for the world. Her hair's a lot lighter in some areas, so I'm going to try to take some of that dark, see if I can get it in with some of this yellow, maybe some of this brown here. My paint is really drying out fast. And then a little bit of white. I'll use this lighter one I have right here. And these are where the sun is hitting her hair. Apparently the sun's coming from this direction and it's hitting really hard right there. So her hair is actually brown all over, but the sun is hitting it really strong right here and highlighting it. just adding a lot of water to it. Just getting a little in there. I'm going to try to very carefully get some whites in her eyes. Hey, Shanna. I am hoping that we can schedule something soon where you come to DeRidder and paint with us. Give us a little class. Her eyes are so small, this is not easy. So don't stress over it. You know, this is a little triangle right here, and this is a little triangle right here, and the light's going to hit that eye somewhere. That really brings her back to life, don't you think? Let's put some highlights on her teeth, which are a little bit sad looking. And I'm going to try to outline her lips just a little bit in a darker color. Oh, let's just pray my brush can go narrow enough for what I'm wanting to do here. Not exactly. Okay, we're going to leave well enough alone there so that we can have time to move on before all the rest of the paint dries. Well, I didn't get her, let me get her neck finished so that it matches the rest of her body there. It's unbelievable how much this paint is dried. I don't have my mist-in bottle in here. It's downstairs. I'm working on the April paint project for my class. I'm not wanting a distinct line right there at her neck. Try to dry brush it a little bit. Looking for anything that's not dry already to make a shadow out of. Okay, before this all dries out, I'm just going to put a bunch on her arms that's lighter up there where the sun's hitting it. It's lighter right here. And lighter right here. We can't forget we've got it on the other page. I can see where it's lighter at this area. We'll go back to our little bit darker color for the shading. I'm in at the bottom of the arm. See how it's a little bit darker, blend that back in. Just a little bit darker right there. Just look for those darker areas and kind of shade them in. Trying to get pretty quick with this here. Back to the lighter one. Since I'm using this flat brush, I'm just trying to use this top corner of it so that I don't have to switch brushes when I'm trying to hurry. Okay, I think that's good on that. Now, I'm just going to go with, what are we going to go with? Let's go with blue for her shirt, because here's blue and it's not dry yet. Although I'm going to tone this blue down. We're through with the skin tone. I'm going to use this blue for her shirt, but because my background's going to be so bold, I don't want her shirt to be so bold too. So I'm going to come right here in my flesh tone that's still wet and mix myself up a blue to use. Now I'm just kind of zipping along with the edge of this brush. You can see there are shadows right there too. I'm just going to reach up and grab a little bit more of the regular blue for those darker areas. It's going to be okay. There's a little bit of a shadow to it up under her hair and these flowers, so I'm just going to come right there with that. So I'm anxious to just do the background, but I want to get her shirt on. I'll worry about the flowers in a minute. Let's see if there's any place else that's particularly shadowed. Kind of through here, while we have the darker on our brush. Part of that's hair, so. You know, this is not going to make a perfect portrait. And again, that's not what we were going for. We were going for practicing to where you can get faster, you can get more confident, more comfortable, to where next time you'll do one like this and do it of someone you know, there'll be a little bit more pressure, but a little bit more enjoyment in the end. And then once you've done that one, then you can practice doing one that doesn't have a photograph under it, where you're just looking at the photograph. And it's sort of a process, and practice does us all good. And working on one with, you know, no pressure like this does us all a lot of good. I'm still just working on areas where there's shadows. That's why I'm kind of skipping around, because I'm picking up some of the darker blue, and then I'm going to quickly fill in with the lighter in a minute. But I'm not mixing these colors really good, because I want the variations in there to give it a little bit of life. Kind of mimicking around her hair a little bit here, so we won't have so much to do with that in a minute. Just look for those shadows. That's the part we're learning. Okay, now back to our lighter blue. Sun's hitting her here on this shoulder. Let's fill her in. If you wanted to put this, her shirt has a little bit of flowers on it. If you want to put some kind of specks and flowers and designs back on the blouse, you can very well go into all that detail. That's all just up to you and what your person's outfit looks like. And we're just wanting to let people know she has on a blue shirt. That's the big indicator here. Our lady has on a blue shirt. I'm just going to grab a few splotches to put in here and there. Awesome, Shanna. That would be awesome. I will hopefully be, you know, our space is kind of small, but hopefully I would be able to fill up that class and we would all have a good time, because I know I want to come to it. Okay, that's all because I wanted to get to the background, which is, well, I better do that hair first, right? Back to a pointy one. Let's find us some brown that's still, that's not completely dry. Mostly just wanting to put some little loose squiggles down here at the end so that it appears like hair that doesn't just end out of nowhere. But we may still have to fix that a little bit once we put the background on. We shall see. Okay. I'm going to go with, gosh, I love purple, but I don't want to go that deep. I'm going to go with this, I'm going to go with this yellow-green as my main background. I'm going to go ahead and grab a little bit of white and put over here beside it and just kind of swirl them together so that everywhere I put it isn't exactly the same. Maybe I'll do a little bit with the blue on this end of it so that as I put it on there, there's a little bit of variation in the color. And we're just going to slop this on here, this way, that way, the other way. Just wanting to get it on. I'm just kind of pouncing it through here to get an indication of the background between this hair. That hair is going to be taking too much time for just a fun play project, so. We're getting to some of the most fun parts for me, where you just don't think 1 second about what you're doing. Just get some paint on there in whatever color you like. I'm just adding water to it to thin it out because it's already getting thick too. I'm not worrying about getting that right up next to her head all perfect and the lines being fantastic and all that. That would too be not a part of what we got going on with this type of painting. Let's dabble in here as we're going to come back and touch up the hair one more time in a minute. I'm going to the edge right next. If your book is like mine, I go right to the edge like that. And I'm probably should have went with these colors to the edge, but I like it this way. Take some pressure off. Remember, you're supposed to be having fun, playing with your paints. I know you can't see this far edge, but I'm not doing anything any different over there either. Just going this way and that way. I'm going to stick in my blue just a tad more because I'm out of it over there, and put the darker down here in this bottom corner. Grab me a little more white. I'm going to put the white right on the page. I'm not going to worry about that. I'll blend it right up there. Scrape what last bit of green I have on here off, and let's just smear it on. Be free. Be free. What I'm thinking. E.T. phone home. It's drying as soon as it must be hotter in this room than I think it is, because it's drying about as quick as I put it on the page. Grabbed a little bit more white and splashed it down there in my grain to try to be able to grab one little bit more off of the palette, because I just want to make sure it's good and covered. You know, the benefit of acrylic paints is how fast they dry, but you know, a downfall of acrylic paints is how fast they dry. Okay. So see, this doesn't match all over. I know you can't see the whole thing. Move it that way and this way. But that gave us a background. And this is when we're going to use our stencils. Probably should let it dry a tad, but I don't want to, you know, I know that we've probably been on here for a little while. Hey, Tanya. And this is where I don't know whether to use my teal or my purple. I'm going to use the teal. I'm just going to put it on my palette right on top of where the green was, because it really doesn't matter. And I'm putting some on, but then I'm going to offload some of that back off, you know, so that it doesn't bleed through here too bad. Doesn't have to be perfect, the same amount of paint in every little detail of your stencil. Doesn't matter if you get a smear. Matters if you had fun. This is a technique that I learned from another artist named Kasha Avery. It's not something that I made up. It is something I've been doing for a long time, but it ain't something that is my original anything. It wouldn't matter if you went over her shirt a little bit or anything, or over part of your portrait a little bit with your background. I don't think I have in this, but I'm not paying that much attention. Just trying to get a little funk to the background here. Sure it can lay down good. And this is a little stenciling brush, but usually I use my chopped off chip brush, which I have here too. But I saw this one sitting there and I'm like, I have that thing, why not use it? As long as you're not trying to paint over it this way, it doesn't matter what you pounce it with. But the stiffer the bristles are, the easier it is to do. But most of the time I use a chip brush and that I've just cut off real short, and that works just fine. I don't know about y'all, but I don't get to play with my craft supplies near often enough. You know, part of the fun is, you know, going with your friends and buying them. I know that. I love to go with my girlfriends, Teresa and Kay and Sherry, and go to Tuesday morning and find unusual stuff. I love to go with Candy and go to Hobby Lobby, and you know, when you get there, if you know, that's over an hour drive for us, so that's getting a little mini girl trip out of it. But you get there, and then the stuff you want is 40% off, or something cool like that happens. Then I used up all that paint. I want a little bit more on here. You know, that's part of the fun. But I sometimes will come home with mine after we've went somewhere for the weekend or something like that, and or even just a day trip, and come home and I may not get my dang bag unpacked for, you know, a month. And then, you know, you get the fun of organizing. I mean, who's lying about what here? Part of the fun of your craft supplies is figuring out how you're going to organize them, and where you're going to put them, and how pretty they look in your craft room. There's so many aspects that make getting to do things like this fun, but one really good one is, the very best one is, when you get to play with them, you know, when you actually get to get them out and use them. I don't know where to put this one. I'm going to go for right there. And that's a bonus. I actually took this entire week off. I don't think my husband even knows that yet, but I'm on salary. I get paid anyways, and it, contrary to what he believes, it is okay to take a vacation now and then. He wouldn't take a vacation day if I paid him to, and he does get lots of them paid to from work, but he won't take them. I, on the other hand, have decided that this year I'm going to take mine when I want to. So I have taken this entire week off, and I've got a buffet that I'm painting downstairs. I will probably come back on here and do something else. I know what I'm going to do. Is anybody interested in this? Because I'm interested in this, and we shall see. It's going to be overkill if I put any more. Let me put just a little bit right here. I want to see if I have one here. Have y'all seen where, and I'm sure, you know, the ones that you see on Pinterest and all that are done by, you know, professionals. Like, here's a very hard old brush. My goodness, this may or may not even be good for stenciling anymore. But I want to try to paint a face on it. Have y'all seen those? Do y'all want to do that kind of project? That's what I'm thinking, is I've got some of these old brushes laying around, and I would like to do something cute with them. And if anybody else wants to hang with me and get a couple of old chip brushes, I mean, these things are under $1. If you go to Harbor Freight, you can get, I buy them by the case there, and it's like $7 for a box of them. So it doesn't cost anything, really. But if anybody else is interested in that, I would love to do something like that. Maybe this week while I'm off would be a good time to just add it into the mix. Awesome, Joy. That would be fun. That would be, that was another thing I was thinking about whenever I was guest hosting on your page the other day was, man, we could have done those brushes, but, you know, I know you like mixed media, so I'm glad we did that. And this is my journal. In Joy's class the other day, I did this journal cover, or in her group, as a class project. But I will do another event and pre-post ahead of time once I look at my schedule. I really, if I'm taking this whole week off, which I have done. I have two of my grandsons have ball games tonight, so I have to leave the house early. I won't get much done today because I've got one's got a double header. I'm going to go to his first game, and then my other grandson is in a preseason tournament, so I'm going to go to his. I have one at 3 in one town and one at 6 in another town. I'm just going to put a little bit of color on these flowers while we're just sitting here still talking, and I'm not worried about much what color they were before. I'm worried about using what colors I have left on my palette. But anyway, I would like to fit that in this week. So just be watching for, I'll put out, if you're on my notifications thing, I will send out a message ahead of time of when it's going to be. If not, watch the page for that. And if you want to join that, let me know. I'll have to set up a new, they call it a bot. I'll have to set up a new bot for that to get it good and started, because I think my old one is so far down the page that nobody sees it anymore. But I have a group of people who are on, who receive notifications via Messenger when I'm going to go live, when it's a scheduled live like this. I mean, I do a bunch of spontaneous ones, but we do have a bot that I can connect, but it takes a little bit of work ahead of time that I haven't done today. But I will set up another one if y'all are, if anybody's not on it and wants to be on it, I'll get another one set up today, and you just look back on the page and comment on it and then respond to the comment. And then after that, before I do any kind of tutorials, main tutorials, I see if I'm going to be able to get any pink out of what little bit of dried out red's on here. Anyways, I'll send that out, but we'll do that. But I have to finish that buffet because that's for my $10 class for April, and I am really enjoying it, but I don't want to, I don't like to get started on something if I'm not going to be able to get a whole amount done, and I don't think I'm going to be able to get a whole amount done today and go to those ball games tonight. And the grandkids are only little once, so. Come on, red. Give me a little bit more. Give me a little bit. Give me just a little bit. There we go. I don't know what kind of music that is playing in the background, but I am glad to have it. I just asked Alexa to play me some royalty-free music, because if you play music that's not royalty-free, then they take your videos down. Don't want that to happen. I'm just going to use this same bright green on those stems. That don't matter, does it? Well, maybe it does matter a little bit since we have all that other green background. We'll see. We'll just mix blue with it. Heck with it. We'll have a blue-green. And this is just a tiny angle brush, and that's only just because it was the first one I could grab. Okay. I think we're done, and I had a lot of fun with that. I hope y'all had a lot of fun with that. If you've ever seen, somewhere back in the photos on this page are portraits that I did of my grandchildren, which, they may have a blue face or an orange face or blue hair and things like that, because that was my other method of practicing portraits without having pressure on myself, and I really tried to make it look like them without having pressure on myself for anybody to think, oh, she's a terrible portrait artist, or, that type of thing. Signing my art. But I really enjoyed doing those too, and that's another way that you can do it and keep the pressure off yourself, because nobody can have expectations of you thinking you're bigger than your britches and doing portraits whenever their hair is purple. So that's my other tip to you. Do something like this, try it, have a good time with it without it being somebody you know, and then after that, when you're ready to try a real one, try it using crazy colors, but still using the shadows and the highlights. If her face was purple, this would have been a darker purple, this would have been a light purple, medium purple, and we would have done all the same exact things. It's just we wouldn't have used, you know, realistic skin tones. But I appreciate y'all joining me. I love it, Joy. I'm enjoying my time at home. And somebody asked for a picture of this where I started in the beginning with the flesh tone. So I'll take a picture of that in a minute, and I'll put a link to my Blick colors in a minute and to my stencil people. And I had a good time with y'all today. It was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed yourself too. And if you did this, please, please post a picture. And if this isn't what you did, post a picture of something else. If you did anything else in your art journal, post a picture of it, because those things are very inspirational to me, but they're also very inspirational to other people who are on the page, because we're all at different stages of our journey. Some people have been, you know, some people are true artists who are selling, you know, their oil portraits of people that look exactly like people for, you know, $1 million a piece. They're probably not on our page, but they're out there. Then there's, you know, your people who love playing like I love playing and trying new things. There's people who have never tried to paint anything before and who got a brand new art journal today just to try this. We're all in here to learn from each other, and you may not ever do anything like this, or may not do anything like this again, but you may decide, you know what, I sure do like green and teal together, and if that's what you got out of it, that's cool too. So please share your work on the page. It makes me and other people get inspired. Like I said, this was inspired by Kasha Avery. I hope that someday somebody's saying, oh, I did this because it was inspired by Terry Stovall. Or I may say, I did this because it was inspired by Tanya Meeks. That's my sister-in-law, I think that's how you say it. And she made a West Virginia flag, American flag thing for Eric, and he's wanting to do one so bad that you know, he can't stand it, so he's being inspired by Tanya, and I've been inspired by other things that Shanna has done and that Joy has done. And so all of us together, you bring inspiration, whether it's your color palette, whether it's a new trend to try, and all that stuff, that we all bring something to the plate. So the more we can all share our stuff with each other, the more, you know, our creative community can grow. But I appreciate y'all, and I have just had a ton of fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing y'all's projects too. Bye.